Good afternoon. Thank you for joining me for this COVID-19 update and briefing. I want to thank again our local journalists for all of your objective coverage as we get all of the information we need to out to the people of Jacksonville. After I make these brief remarks, I've got some other folks on the call that will be available to answer questions. Joining me today for questions is CAO Brian Hughes, CFO Joey Grivey, Fire Chief Keith Powers, JSO Director Mike Bruno, and Emergency Operations Center Director Steve Woodard. This morning, the Florida Department of Health is reporting 937 positive cases of COVID-19 in Duval County, 84 hospitalizations, 17 deaths, and a positive percentage of test results of 4.9%. The data shows that we're on the right track and will continue to move forward. Tomorrow, my team will file legislation with the City Council to allocate nearly $160 million in Federal CARES Act funds to provide relief to our citizens and support our ongoing response to COVID-19. The Jacksonville COVID-19 Relief Program will include $40 million in direct stimulus for individuals to help with mortgage, rent, and utility payments. This program will provide $1,000 in relief to 40,000 households that meet certain criteria. You must be a Duval County resident, make less than $75,000 a year, and have lost at least 25% of your income because of the COVID-19 crisis to be eligible for this assistance. $35 million will be allocated towards sustained COVID-19 testing sites, and other healthcare infrastructure needs. Testing will be offered throughout Jacksonville so that we can serve every neighborhood. $12.5 million will go to the city's COVID-19 emergency account for response expenditures not reimbursed by FEMA. $26 million to fully fund the city's obligations to the COVID-19 Small Business Relief and Employee Grant Program we launched in partnership with ViStar Credit Union. $25 million to offset declines in anticipated city revenues due to COVID-19, like taxes and fees. Part of this will include waiving nearly $10 million in building and mobility fees to encourage economic development and keep people working, and $20 million in economic relief for entities that are managing or operating city-owned facilities or functions on behalf of the city. Again, we will file this with City Council tomorrow and issue a news release with more information at that time. I look forward to working with my colleagues on City Council to pass this important legislation for the people of Jacksonville. This is a significant moment for our city, our state, our nation, and our world. The people of Jacksonville and elsewhere are facing unprecedented economic pain and uncertainty because of a deadly virus that spread throughout the world. The U.S. shutdown we're all experiencing was in reaction to the shocking and sudden impact this virus caused to nations and hospitals in other parts of the world. In some countries, we watched as ICUs were overwhelmed and healthcare workers struggled to handle the load. Here in the U.S., healthcare experts and hospitals had multiple models telling us we were headed in the same direction, even here in Jacksonville. We all took varying degrees of extreme measures to stop this from happening and minimize the death toll. The actions we took together flattened the curve. Thankfully, because of those actions, hospitalizations and death models did not play out as predicted. That said, people are restless. I'm restless. My family is restless, and we should be. When an entire economy is shut down, jobs are lost, and our way of life is disrupted, and with the projections coming nowhere close to what was predicted, people will question decisions, and more importantly, future warnings. Public trust is critical. The COVID-19 crisis is new and unknown, so we all acted in the action and what we believe to be in the best interests of our communities with the data and the information available. Know this, I believe based on the information we have that we flattened the curves in Duval County and we're saving lives. And we will continue to save lives with social distancing in the days and weeks ahead. I will always speak to you, the people of Jacksonville, directly with the information that I have. In the coming weeks, we will reopen our community in a responsible, cautious, and incremental way, knowing this virus is with us, and we will plan for a potential resurgence. Hospitals now know they need to be ready for patient loads. We can and must be prepared for this. Another massive shutdown is not an option. We must get this right. Again, We're under statewide executive orders, and my administration is actively having conversation with the governor's office on this process. Under the White House's plan to reopen America again, when communities meet the initial criteria, they may begin a 3-phase process to return to normalcy. My team is working to understand what this looks like for Jacksonville under phase 1. Phase 1 in President Trump's plan contemplates soft re-entry to work in social settings with strict social distancing guidelines. Again, we'll have more soon on what this means for Jacksonville. As discussed earlier this week, enhanced testing will play a major role in our efforts to reopen our community. Increased testing will get us closer to the goal of identifying, isolating positive cases and allow us to better track the prevalence of COVID-19 in our community. As part of these efforts, this Friday, we are beginning free walk-up COVID-19 testing at Henry Brown Cougar Park on the east side at 1400 East 20th Street. The hours will be from 9 to 5 daily. The site will conduct 200 tests per day, and anyone who wants to be tested can be. Additionally, the city is partnering with Walmart to provide drive-up testing at 2 Walmart locations that we expect to open early next month. This testing will be by appointment only, and more information will be provided soon. Jacksonville has also been selected as a national test site where Quest Labs, UF Health, Sulzbacher will be providing system-wide testing of all homeless clients and shelter staff, which is expected to start early next week. Of course, there are many other ways to get tested. We have 2 drive-up locations with Lot J and the Prime Osborne Convention Center. UF Health and the State Department of Health are providing testing for the elderly and UF Health patients in multiple neighborhoods. Many local hospitals and healthcare providers are conducting COVID-19 testing, and the Department of Health is testing as well. If you want to be tested for COVID-19, call your healthcare provider or county health department. The state's COVID hotline can be reached at 1-866-779-6121. And understand that as we add widespread testing, expect raw numbers of positive cases to go up because of more testing. The number we will continue to pay attention to is the percentage of positives of total tested. Before we wrap up and go to questions, a few reminders. At 7 o'clock tonight, make that call. Pick up the phone and call somebody, listen to them, share with them. It will touch you and it will touch them and it will make a difference in someone's life. My team is constantly updating a list of resources for individuals and businesses on the city's website at coj.net/recovery resources, which includes information on social services, financial relief, mental health counseling, trauma support, and disaster loans. And let's remember to be mindful and caring for those who struggle with addiction, depression, thoughts of suicide, or even domestic abuse. If you know someone, consider giving them a call to check in and let them know you care. There's help available to those who need. I want to remind people when you're in grocery stores out getting essential items, please wear masks. It will make a difference. In fact, we have to be responsible and disciplined about this, and it's new to us. Last night, I wear a mask in stores. I started to walk into a store without my mask on. I forgot it. And a gentleman stopped me and said, "Mayor, you need to set the example." And you know what? He's right. I forgot, and I'm glad he reminded me. Let's remind each other. Let's be smart. Let's keep our social distancing, and let's continue to get through this together. Again, thank you to our local media partners for your help in sharing these updates with the people of Jacksonville. With that, we'll take questions. Jim with WJXT.
Mayor, questions are already pouring in from our viewers about the local stimulus plan. How do you anticipate people applying for that? What, there are going to be requirements, as you had mentioned, about loss of income, but what will determine what a household is? Can you have roommates and everybody get it? How will that work? And mainly, when would they anticipate seeing that money, and would it be directly deposited?
Joey or Brian, you can take that question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we lay out the legislation tomorrow and then hopefully hear it with council on Monday, that will set a course that should just be a few days, hopefully a week to 10 days, but we're going to be able to, by the time the bill is in front of council on Monday, we'll have the specific timeline built out, but it will be a matter of days. As it relates to the household, we have to restrict it to each household, and it's going to be an automated block for an address built into the system of verification. The basic nuts and bolts, again, will be laid out, but There will be a online component, and for those without access online, there'll be a telephone component that will be directed through 630 City. But again, 630 City will, via phone, help those without computers. There will be transportation to a location where the final steps are undertaken. And for those that need transportation, we're working out an agreement with JTA. At this point, that's the overview of the details. I think starting tomorrow with the legislation and then Monday at City Council, we'll have exact timelines and exact information for folks. But it will be a very expeditious process, and one that is meant to get the cash in the hands of those who need it with every bit of haste that we can add. Thank you.
Christopher with the Florida Times Union.
Hey, Mayor, I'm going to pivot to the JEA issue. Today, the federal investigators requested records from JEA about any communications between JEA officials and your office about the hiring of Aaron Zahn and also the ITN and the PUP plan. Can you talk about what, if any, communications like that happen?
Yeah, so I learned of the subpoena last night from the office of our general counsel, and my understanding is that it's a widespread request for documents and any communication potentially between people in my office and the JEA team. That's not a surprise to me. And if we're asked, as I've said before, if we're asked, my office, or if I'm asked to do anything, we're obviously going to comply and be helpful. Mike with the Daily Record.
Yeah, hi, Mayor. Also, in reference to the JEA issue, I know that interim CEO Melissa Dykes is a member of your advisory council on to reopen Jacksonville. In light of the subpoena, will she remain on that advisory council? And then also another question in regard to the actual stimulus itself. It's I believe $20 million is going to be going to private contractors that operate city facilities. Are there specific businesses or private contractors that will receive those funds? Has that decision been made?
I'll take the first question, then I'll give it to Joey or Brian, the other one. Yes, Melissa will remain a critical member of our reopening team. She's the head of one of our largest independent agencies, and it's important that all the independent agencies and the city of Jacksonville are working together and collaborating to get people back to work and make sure we take care of our citizens. So with that, this next question can go to Joey or Brian.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. So to answer the question specifically, there will be a multitude of contractors that qualify for the program. They're going to have to demonstrate on an application that they've been impacted by coronavirus. We've had several entities in town reaching out for assistance throughout this process, and we wanted to make sure that as part of the $159 million from the federal government that we're flowing it through to those in need. And local businesses who will meet the criteria that we lay out in an exhibit that will be attached to the ordinance that Brian mentioned is going to lay out the criteria for who will and will not qualify for that type of relief.
Kelly with WJXT.
Hi, Mayor. I have two questions. My first question also has to do with the subpoena to JEA. The one specific request was for any correspondence communication between your administration and JEA senior leaders on an app called Confide. It's a private and secure messaging app. Do you use that app to communicate, or have you ever used it to communicate with your staff or anyone on city related business?
No, I don't even know what that app is.
My second question was just about the testing that happened at some Jacksonville housing buildings with seniors. Do you know what came of some of that testing with UF Health? Did you find that there were any people that were infected with COVID-19 living in those areas, in the JHA building specifically?
Yeah, I'll turn that to Director Woodard. I believe it would be Director Woodard or the fire chief.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we know, UF did some targeted testing in communities that were underrepresented, and I know the Department of Health is still looking at those numbers and continuing that testing. We have not gotten any specific information, but when we do, we'll give that to you.
Ryan, Action News.
So logistically speaking, who would be responsible for actually dispersing the funds in terms of the local stimulus? And then beyond that, I also wanted to ask, is there any possibility of extending the eviction suspensions? Because a lot of people have been impacted in terms of unemployment recently.
Brian and Joey, you can take that question.
The latter part first. The evictions are a function of civil court proceedings. So the guidance related to the timelines on evictions and all that is a mandate through the state Supreme Court down to the local courts. But obviously, the governor and the leaders of the court and administration have continued to keep that process on hold. And I think the mayor can speak to it, but he's given guidance that if we're asked our opinion, we'd like to see that on hold as long as people are suffering through this. But ultimately, that relies on the courts. What's the other piece?
Sure. So on to your other question, we're going to have a suite of individuals set up at a location downtown. And as Brian mentioned, we'll have transportation assistance set up in place to assist people in getting that facility. But we will have a group of individuals set up and trained on how to take in the applications and disperse the funds to the individuals who successfully apply and qualify for that assistance.
Elizabeth with Action News.
Hi, Mayor. I have two questions. The first one is with testing. And the latest numbers that we actually got today, it looks like there's only one new case in Duval, only 5 in Northeast Florida. It seems much lower than some of the other surrounding counties. Could this be a result of bad weather shutting down testing sites, or maybe a delay in getting those results back?
I'll let the Director Woodard answer that with specificity, but there's a lot of testing happening in our community outside of even those drive-up sites. I talk to the hospitals, as you know, regularly. They're performing tests, and all that data goes back to the Department of Health. So the key number to look at is, again, the percentage of total positives. Director, do you want to add to that?
Yes, sir. The test results for us overall, and over 19,000 tests have been conducted in Duval County from all the sources that we know about, and that's coming back at about 4.9% positive. And as you noted today, there's only one additional case that has been reported. Certainly may be a function of weather, a lot of the other factors. And as the mayor mentioned, as we see additional testing sites open, we'd expect those numbers to change.
Okay, I had a second question real quick. Since the beaches partially reopened, we're starting to see, it appears that more people are going out into the public. We've even talked to some businesses saying that they've noticed more business as well. Mayor, does that concern you at all? I know you talked about, continue social distancing. Is there anything you want to say to the public, as it appears that more are going outside of their homes now?
Well, I will continue to encourage people to exercise and walk and get outside and use it to do it in a responsible way, as I have from the beginning. I would discourage going to stores for non-essential reasons. In fact, non-essential businesses should not be open. But don't go to the grocery store just because you want to walk around. Please get in, get your groceries, wear a mask, practice social distancing. Again, my observation is, by and large, people are observing this, but it takes one to be in a group of people, compact, and not practicing these requests. And as I said before, I know this is new to us, and sometimes we can forget. So we just need to remind each other. And that's what I say to the people now: if you don't need to go to the store, don't go, please. Lou with First Coast News.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple quick things. First, with this stimulus, is there going to be a slide scale with how much each household would be or individually eligible for, or is it going to be a sort of a flat kind of stimulus? And secondly, a bigger picture, Governor DeSantis had some reaction to the whole Florida morons hashtag that had been going around nationally, and laid on some praise to what is happening here in Jacksonville and Duval County. Wanted to get your reaction to what he had to say, if you had a chance to hear it.
I did hear it, and I appreciate, my relationship with the governor and his team. I'm grateful for it. We've been in constant communication through this entire crisis, while I know he's been focused on an entire state. So I'm grateful for his comments. And I just, as I said, I think yesterday or the day before, I just got asked in another interview I did, about other cities and other states. And it's real. I'm not going to sit back and make judgments on whether the cities and other states are doing based on the information they have in front of them. I'm pulling for everybody. I mean, this is the United States of America. We ought to be pulling for every city in every state. But leaders in their own cities have to make their own, in counties have to make their own decisions based on the information and the data they have and their best judgment using that information. That's what we're going to do in Jacksonville. And with that, I'll turn the other part of the question over to Joey and Brian.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. As it relates to, there won't be a sliding scale. It'll be a flat $1,000 grant. We've streamlined, to make it expeditious, we've streamlined an approval, an application process. And when, again, it'll all be completely rolled out with the specific timeline next week. But in order to expedite it, we've simply got a per household number. And quite frankly, if you look at the impacts that group of people who would meet the criteria are facing, the addition of a sliding scale would be more of a burden on the administrative end and would be an undue burden on those who seek it out. Thank you.
David, First Coast.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, good afternoon. Good to see you. Two questions. One, I'm wondering if you can speak to the appearance that a federal grand jury issuing a subpoena to the city's utility may have, how that may reflect on the taxpayers. And two, I'm wondering, in that communication that you have had with the governor's office, how much of that has been about unemployment claimants, and is there anything that the city can do for people who have been waiting for weeks and some over a month for any kind of payment from the state?
Yeah, well, as to the first part of your question, again, I learned of the subpoena last night, and I would expect that the utility would comply. I'm sure they will. And if cities asked to do anything, we will as well. As it relates to the second part of your question, I know, look, I know the governor and his team are working hard to get people their unemployment checks. And in fact, I've learned that they're deploying people on the ground around the state. And I know my team is actively working, getting people in the city of Jacksonville to help them resolve this issue and get money in their hands. Jim with WJXT.
Mayor, just kind of following up on the stimulus question. Will those that apply, is it first come, first serve? Will they need any documentation to show that, hey, I'm unemployed, or do you even have to be unemployed? I mean, these are the questions that are coming in right now. And then also on your next step for the city, you had said that you're looking ahead for phase one, but can you give me an idea of what you're anticipating as phase one? Who would be allowed to open first?
I'll take the second part of the question. We are evaluating what that would look like. That's not a snap decision we will make. So there will be some form of non-essential businesses that will go back to work. We will likely continue to ask people to work from home if they can, if they're in a non-essential business. Whether or not that's mandated under an executive order is still being discussed. We're watching, the governor's executive order expires, I believe, sometime in early May. I'm in conversations with them about the direction they're headed. And then we'll collaborate with them and move from there. What I can tell people is that as our numbers continue to decline, and we know that the governor is looking at his executive order, we're close to starting a reopening. But it's going to be really important that the people practice social distancing, and I'm asking them to wear masks. The first part of the question, Jim, I believe was, yes, the stimulus is first come, first serve. As it relates to process, there will be process, and I'll let Joey and Brian answer that.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I would just add to what I said before. We are doing everything we can as we finalize the bill to ensure a process that does require a level of certification from each individual, but also in order to streamline it, that will be as minimal as we can keep it, but still ensure the taxpayer dollars are protected. So when we lay out the bill tomorrow and then go in through the weekend, we'll have more detail and timeline. But for your viewers, I would just encourage them. We've explained the basic criteria the mayor did earlier, which is if you're the median income of 75,000 or lower, and demonstrated impact of at least 25% of your income or more has been impacted by COVID. So if they fit that criteria, stay tuned as the legislation rolls out tomorrow and the process is laid out. We'll have more specifics on how it'll work. But we are accounting for folks that may not have access online or may have transportation issues. And we're trying to make it streamlined so that while the state system does take some additional time, at the local level, 40,000 households will be impacted positively. And we're going to do that as quickly as we humanly can. Thank you.
Ellen with the Jacksonville Business Journal.
Good afternoon, Mayor. 2 questions for you. I was just curious if you could tell me a little bit about what the City Council reaction to the stimulus has been, and are you confident they're going to support it? And then also, I was curious when we might hear more about initiating phase 1 of reopening, and can you provide any timeline on when that reopening will start to take place?
Sure. Very, very positive reaction from the City Council. I'm so grateful for their partnership through all of this. And so I expect it to pass, and I expect to get dollars into people's hands. And the second part of the question was?
I was curious if you could provide any timeline around initiating phase 1 of reopening, when we might see that happen.
If numbers continue to trend the way they are, and we meet the criteria consistently that they've laid out, my goal is to be open in May and not late May. That's what I can tell you right now. It's time to get people back. We just have to work through the orders that I have. We have to work through the order. I would remind people we are under a statewide safer at home order, and we're under a local safer at home that we're working to peel back sooner rather than later. Emily with the Florida Times Union.
Hi, Mayor. I just have a question. If you have any insight on the 0-year-old case that appeared in the Duval County COVID records yesterday, do we have any insight on if this is an infant or if it's possibly a clerical error like what we saw in St. John's?
Director Woodard, can you take that question?
Yes, we saw that number as well. I believe it has been at 0 through a couple of reporting periods, but we do not have any additional information on that.
This will be the last question. Ryan with Action News.
In terms of the stimulus package, if an individual has been claimed by their parents, are they still going to be eligible to apply for this and perhaps receive some of that assistance?
Brian and Joey, please.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. The basic criteria is, as we've said, the income threshold, and then the demonstration of, or the certification of impact. Of course, as we've said, we have to limit it to each household. So if a child, if there was a child or even a grown adult child who lives with a parent, that would impact the household count. But the basic criteria are related to the median income and below, and the demonstration of the impact of 25% or less. And that demonstration will be done through a certification of each individual in the application process. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, I just want to remind people, if you don't have to be in a store, please don't go. Like you to wear a mask, really encourage you, ask you to wear a mask, and practice social distancing. I am encouraged, and I've seen a number of stores, takeout and grocery stores, where they have the markers in place to keep people 6 feet apart. I've actually seen the frontline workers at these stores gently encourage people, if they get outside of that space, to please move back. But let's just all practice this together. Thank you.